Good morning, gentlemen. So today what we're going to do is we're going to begin chapter 1, the consumer arithmetic, speaking specifically about personal finance. And we're going to start with section 1A, which is salary and wages. Salary and wages are just different ways in which you are paid the money that you earn for working. And they're distinctly different ways of calculating your pay depending on the payment agreement that you have. So first thing we're going to do is just define both of them, and then we're going to look at a few examples of how to calculate them, and I'm going to show you a formula that you're going to use for wages that you can arrange and rearrange using some basic algebra skills. So the first one we're going to talk about is salary. Now this is pretty much the easiest one. So salary is simply payment. Again, remember split page note-taking system. Payment for a year's work. Now, of course, they're not going to pay you all at one time. Instead, it's going to be divided into equal monthly, fortnightly, or weekly payments. So, if you were paid on a salary, then that's just an agreed upon amount. So you're not likely to earn anything else other than your salary. So if you work your 40 hours or 36 hours a week, depending on your contract, then that's how much you get paid. You also usually get sick leave and holiday pay, that kind of thing. But that's factored into the salary, so you don't need to add that in as an extra amount. Now, if you, for example, worked 45 hours one week, then you still just get your salary. So you don't get it. You typically don't get anything extra here when you have your salary, right? Now, for salary, it's quite easy to figure your salary. It just depends on how much, what payment option you have. In other words, are you going to be paid monthly, fortnightly, or weekly? So to do your salary, you just take the amount divided by the number of periods, and we'll talk about that in a minute, equals the pay, right? So for example, you just need to remember that if you're paid monthly, that's 12 periods because there are 12 months in a year. If you're paid fortnightly, then that's 36 periods. 26 periods. Oh dear, can't do math. Sorry, guys. All right, 26 periods. I should slow down and pay attention. Because there are 52 weeks in a year, and fortnightly means every 2 weeks. And finally, weekly, you're going to have 52 periods. Now, there are standard business weeks and standard business years that round. Don't worry about those for these particular calculations. So usually in class, the video would just include the notes, but I want to do some examples here because you're working online, so we're going to kind of combine class and notes. Don't get used to it. It's not the way it's going to work forever. Okay? So, say for example that you earn $65,208 paid fortnightly. So we want to see how much you receive each fortnight. So you're just going to take the 65,208, divide it by the number of periods, and since it's fortnightly, that always means 26 periods, and then do that division. Okay? When you do the division, you're going to get 2508. And one thing that you will definitely get in trouble for is make sure that you're writing units and You have to remember that $2,508 is never an answer because that doesn't mean anything. If I just walked up to you and said $2,508, that means, are you going to give it to me? Am I going to give it to you? Or did I find it on the street? We always have to write our answer in words. Okay? So let's talk about the steps that we have. Okay? So your steps. Remembering your formula of the amount or your earnings divided by the periods equals your pay. Okay, abbreviated a little bit, but that's fine. First, you're simply going to plug in what you know. And you may remember from algebra that is called substitution. Anytime you replace a variable or an unknown or a word or a piece of a formula with a number, then that's called substitution. And I'm going to always give you the correct words because when you see them later, it's going to make a big difference. Second, solve the equation. Now, these are equations, and you know that any formula is an equation, and you know that because you have that equal symbol there. So that makes it an equation. And you solve it by just doing the math that you can do. Sometimes, like in this one, the example we did, it was very straightforward. You just had to do the division and it gave you how much pay you were going to have. Right? And then finally, write your answer in words. Answers that are just numbers just don't make sense. They don't have any meaning. So you always have to write it in words, and you always have to remember that you'll be using the proper units. So for that one, this was an example where the person's name was Mitchell. We would write Mitchell is paid $2,508 per fortnight. You must give the who, what, when, and where. Who, what, when, where. Always. Anything that you can give. So who was paid? Mitchell was paid. How much was he paid? And there's the when per fortnight. Okay? Pretty straightforward on that particular example. Now, if you had the same example, but you didn't know how many times, you didn't know how much when he was paid, you could still compute that using the same formula. So let's just say the same thing. He had $65,208, and we know that he earns every pay period he gets $2,508. So what we don't know is we don't know this period amount. All right? So anytime you have one of these, it's not a big deal to solve these. We just have to remember that when we're solving an algebraic equation, then we're just going to do the opposite. So say we have 65,208. Now I'm going to rewrite the division, and I'm also going to call period just P equals that number. Remember that the fraction bar and the division symbol are the same thing. Now, I need to get rid of the P in the bottom, so the opposite of divide by P is multiply by P, and you can do anything you want to as long as you do it equally to both sides. Do you remember that? So over here, the P's will divide away, which gives me 65,208. Equals, now P times that is just 2508P. Now, they're connected with multiplication, and the opposite of multiply is divide, because remember, your whole goal is to get the letter by itself, get the P by itself. So we'll divide both sides by 2508. And of course, we already know it's 26. So his periods, the pay periods, are 26. So Michael is paid 2508 per fortnight. So he's paid fortnightly in this particular scenario. Okay? Now, not quite sure where your homework is going to take you. It might take you to something this complex. If it does, you'll have seen an example of it. Remember, you're just solving an equation anytime you're working with a formula. But if that gives you trouble, don't worry about it. I will be happy to help you out and make some more videos if you need them. The other formula that you're going to need, or the other one we need, is we need to talk a little bit about wages. Now, wages work a little bit differently in that a wage is a payment for a week's work. Okay? And it's calculated per hour. So in other words, you're going to make so many dollars per hour. Okay? So it's calculated per hour or on an hourly basis. And there's a formula for this one as well. Okay? You're simply going to take your hourly rate times the number of hours, and that's going to equal your total pay or your wages. And again, because we have a formula, we have that equal symbol in there, we know that this is an equation, so we can manipulate it using our equation solving skills. So, which we'll talk a lot about, so don't panic if you're a little weak on that. So let's talk about the steps. Again, anytime you're working with a formula, you're basically talking about substitution. So first thing is that you're going to substitute the known values into the formula. And again, I want you to see the connection here. Anytime you're working with a formula, it doesn't matter if that formula is for area of a circle or anything, that you're always, when you're finding numbers, you're just going to be substituting into that formula. Second, solve. Third, answer your question in a complete sentence, right? So, for example, say we have Jasmine is paid at a rate of $1,098 for a 48-week. So Jasmine makes $1,098, don't forget your units, for a 40-hour week. So our question is, how much does she make per hour? So per hour is our question. And I'm abbreviating a little here. I'm fine with you abbreviating as well, as long as you don't abbreviate too much in your answer so that it doesn't make any sense. So all you're going to do is think about that formula. The formula is the rate times the number of hours equals her total pay. So rate would be that per hour amount. And that's what we don't know. So we're just going to leave it as an R. Okay? Times, we know how many hours she works. She works 40 hours. And we know how much she gets paid. She gets paid $1,098. Now, you don't need the dollar symbol when you're working with those unless you think you're going to lose it if you don't use it. Okay? So since we're working to get this R by itself, we just see the operation that it's connected to. The 40 is connected to it with multiplication. And to solve any equation, you simply do the opposite. Well, the opposite of multiply by 40 is to divide by 40. And whatever you do to one side, you do exactly the same thing to the other. The 40s here will divide away, which just leaves me with my R. And on this side, if you divided 1098 by 40, you're going to get 27.45. And of course, that's in dollars. So now we need to write out a sentence to make that make sense. So our sentence is simply, Jasmine earns $27.45 per hour. Keep it simple, but make sure it's a complete sentence. Okay? Now, what if we changed her her number of hours? Then you would just take the rate times the new number of hours, because sometimes, of course, you don't go to work every day. But so you could do that. As long as you know the formula, the rate times the hours equals the pay, then it doesn't really matter which thing you know. So say that she earned $27.45 per hour, and this time she's going to work 38 hours. So how much would her pay be? Her wage. Okay. Well, we have all our numbers on one side, so that simply means we're just going to multiply those numbers together, and that's going to give us 1043.10 equals P. So that means we could write out our sentence. Jasmine earns $1,043 for working 38 hours. Okay, so relatively straightforward, but it's going to mean that you're going to have to really concentrate on your algebra skills for these. Now, short lesson, going to continue to do that, so I'll post another one before your next class. So just work on these. You have the exercises for exercise set 1A, and hopefully you have access to your electronic textbook. I know that was a problem, but hopefully they're back online. If you have any issues at all, make sure you email me or send me a message in Teams. Do something to make sure that you're understanding what's happening here. I don't want you to get lost in this first week when you're working on your own. Okay? I'm here no matter when you need to talk to me. Thanks so much.